in a forgotten corner of the countryside, where the earth itself seemed to groan beneath the weight of old secrets, there lived a woman so ancient that the villagers whispered. She was older than time itself. Her body was twisted, her back bent, her face lined like the bark of an oak, and they said moss had begun to grow upon her skin. Yet for all her age, she did not die. Her house stood apart, a crooked silhouette on the hill, and though she never worked the fields, her barns overflowed with grain, her cattle multiplied, her chests brimmed with gold. Some said she was blessed, but most believed her fortune was dark and unholy, a gift from the devil himself. At night, shadows moved in her windows when no one was near. In hushed voices they called her a witch, but never aloud. For fear, her ears could hear through walls. She had a son who grew up in the shadow of her wealth. From the time he was a boy, he heard the rumors that his mother consorted with the devil, that her riches came not from honest labor but from infernal bargains. And though he tried to dismiss them, one night his eyes betrayed him. He woke to the sound of voices, followed the murmur through the dark, and saw his mother at the threshold of her house, speaking to something that was not human. The thing had no form he could name, a shadow thicker than night, with eyes that glowed like embers in a dying fire. Its voice was like wind moaning through a graveyard. He froze, his heart hammering, and in that moment he swore he would never touch his mother's wealth, never accept her fortune, never walk the road she had chosen. He grew into a man, and though his mother offered him land, cattle, gold, he turned his back on it all. Instead, he married a poor village girl. Their life was hard. The house leaked in the rain. The roof sagged. The cupboards were often bare. His hands bled from endless labor. His wife wept from hunger. But he reminded himself again and again that it was better to starve with a clean soul than to feast with the devil's stain. Years crawled by. He had a daughter, bright-eyed but weary from hunger. The grandmother aged into something beyond mortal, her body so ancient that she seemed less woman than relic, her skin gray, her eyes pale and watery, her breath a whisper that refused to stop. The villagers wondered aloud why death would not take her. The answer was known to the old. She could not die until she passed her bargain to another. The son refused to listen, refused to see her, refused to allow her shadow to cross his threshold. But the daughter, tired of rags and empty bowls, asked him, "Father, why do you never speak to grandmother? Why do you hate her so?" He waved her away, his jaw tight, his eyes filled with something she did not understand, fear. And then the invitations began. The old woman sent word, calling the girl to visit her. The father forbade it, but the girl's hunger, her longing for warmth, for dresses, for food, grew heavier each day. One night, when the stars were pale and the air hung heavy with silence, she disobeyed. She slipped through the fields and climbed the crooked path to her grandmother's house. The old woman greeted her with a smile that showed toothless gums and eyes that glittered with something unnatural. The house smelled of herbs and smoke and something acrid beneath, like sulfur. "My child," the grandmother croaked, her voice dry as dead leaves, "you are the one. All that I have is yours, the land, the gold, the animals, the wealth. You shall never know hunger again. Take it. Accept it. It is yours now. The girl, heart pounding, saw visions in her mind. Warm bread, fine gowns, fires that never went out. She agreed. She whispered yes, though she did not know what she had bound herself to. That night, the old woman began to die. It was not the peaceful slipping away of the elderly. It was agony. She writhed in her bed, her voice a guttural scream that curdled the blood of those who heard it. Her fingers clawed at the sheets, her mouth foamed, her eyes bulged with terror. For 3 nights it went on, her body refusing release. The villagers shook their heads knowingly. A witch cannot die beneath a whole roof. Only when her house is broken, when the sky is exposed, can her spirit depart. On the 3rd night, moved by pity or fear, the villagers tore open the thatched roof above her. She screamed once more, a sound like 1,000 souls being dragged into fire. And then she was still. The house grew silent. The daughter moved into her inheritance. Gold gleamed in chests, silks folded in wardrobes, animals fat and healthy in the barns. For 2 nights she feasted, rejoiced, laughed. For the first time, her belly was full. But on the 3rd night, the shadows stirred. The bread turned black with mold, though it had just come from the oven. Milk curdled into a thick red fluid. The cattle lowed in terror, throwing themselves against the walls of the barn. The house shook as though gripped by a storm, yet outside the night was calm. And in the rafters, she heard scratching, claws that did not belong to any earthly beast. She fled in terror, running through the fields until she came to the hut of the village sorcerer, a hunched man with eyes like coal. She begged him to explain, and he told her, "Your grandmother made a pact with a Bisyk, a small demon. He gave her everything, wealth, power, fortune. But there are rules. He must be fed. Never salted food, or he will recoil. And she could never die her own death until another took her burden. That burden is now yours." The girl's hands shook. "And if I refuse? If I run?" The sorcerer's mouth curled into a grim smile. "Then he will feed on you." She stumbled home, her heart heavy, torn between horror and longing. She cursed her father for denying her the wealth, cursed herself for agreeing, cursed her hunger that had led her here. And then she chose. That night she placed food on the table, unsalted bread, meat still warm from the hearth. The shadows thickened. The air grew cold, then hot, then still, as though the world itself held its breath. From the corner of the room, a shape unfolded. It was not large, but its presence filled the house. Its eyes were 2 coals burning in the dark, its body shifting between smoke and flesh, its claws dragging across the floor with a sound that pierced her bones. She could not move, though every part of her screamed to flee. The Bisyk leaned forward, its mouth splitting into a grin too wide for its face. She saw teeth like shards of broken glass, a tongue that flickered like a serpent's, and a stench of rot and sulfur that choked her. "You have fed me," it whispered, its voice inside her skull. "Now I am bound to you as I was bound to her." And though terror knifed through her veins, she did not run. She stood, trembling, but still. The pact was sealed. After that night, the house was full again. Gold returned, the barn swelled, the fire never died. She married, and her life looked blessed. But those who watched closely saw the shadows linger in her windows long after the candles were snuffed out. The years turned and still she thrived, yet the villagers knew the story would not end. It would echo generation after generation, each time the pact passed on, each time another soul chained itself to the demon. And as for the girl's soul, when her time came, no one knew. Some said the Bisyk swallowed it whole. Others whispered that her spirit wandered, lost between worlds, never at rest. Only the devil knew the truth. And in the dark of the village, when the wind howled through the broken roofs, some swore they heard her scream,